Hello, BookTube, and welcome to your Daily Penguin. This is our tour through my Penguin Classic wall, and we have been largely unguided in that tour because the wall is a mess. The books largely sprawl all over creation in terms of when the author wrote them, or the same author's books being located in many different places. But I thought that I would theme up this last week of October to coincide with Victober. If I'd been thinking, I would have done that for the whole month of October. Victober is an old BookTube tradition where we concentrate on all the glories of Victorian literature. It's in an inexhaustible amount, and I haven't generally in this March of the Penguins been looking forward at future books. I've liked the element of surprise as much as I think a lot of you have. But in this case, for the rest of the week, I thought we would do, for the rest of the month of October, I thought we would do Victorian classics. And today we have a lovely Penguin Classic Deluxe Edition, the 150th anniversary issue of Lewis Carroll's Alice books. Alice's Adventures in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, one from 1865, I think, the end of the American Civil War. And then a few years later, like 1870, was Through the Looking Glass. And this is a lovely edition. Of course, you have the original commissioned artwork that Penguin Classic Deluxe editions always have. You've got the French flaps, which also have artwork, front and back. You've got the deckled edges, a source of contention here on BookTube, but I love them, absolutely love them. And this edition also has, let me see, let me get you the whole run through here. This is introduced by Charlie Lovett, and it's got illustrations by John Tenniel, whose illustrations are justly famous. They are synonymous with these books. And they are all throughout. This is just a lovely, lovely edition. The type of thing that for Penguin Classic Deluxe editions is just a home run. I love it when they do this sort of thing. I'm not always happy with their design choices, not always happy with their layout choices or artwork choices or anything like that. But in this case, absolutely. In this case, this is just wonderful. So I'm glad that I have it. But I know that just yesterday I was talking about how the humor of the Victorians is often their least remarked quality, and especially for outsiders, for people looking at so-called classical literature from the outside and thinking ye old-timey novels. I've seen quite a few booktubers who look at anything written before their own high school graduation in that way, and certainly anything this old, as just so old as to be incomprehensible. Gigantic barrier seems to exist between those books and people who are otherwise very adventurous readers. I never know quite what to do about that. In my normal walking around life, I know exactly what to do about that, but on BookTube, where this is supposed to be a community of dedicated adventurous readers, I'm not always sure what to do when you tell someone whose channel is absolutely full of contemporary work, hey, you know, there's a forerunner of all of the contemporary work that you love. The work that you love wouldn't exist without that forerunner, and that forerunner is, and then you name somebody who wrote 200 years ago, and you can just see the portcullis come down across their eyes. I don't know quite what to do about that. And one of the elements that those people always miss is humor. They just don't. Those kinds of sort of, I won't call them timid readers, because I know they're not. I would say poorly taught readers, and there's no fault of their own, and the fault lies later with them. The fault isn't, they were taught these things wrong. They were forced at gunpoint to read 150 pages a week. They were forced to regurgitate pre-planned points and references about them. That part wasn't their fault, and that can leave a bad taste in anybody's mind. The fault for them comes later, in that you're supposed to constantly revisit your certainties. Even I do. Even I do. And before any of you get going, okay, on Cormac McCarthy or Kurt Vonnegut, if I live long enough, I might revisit them. But don't hold your breath. But one way or another, even in that case, my animus against such writers is not founded on ignorance. It's not founded on bad teaching, the way the animus that I'm talking about is. As I'd like to think I have demonstrated, at least in the case of one Cormac McCarthy novel, I can defend my criticism of those crappy authors. I have thought about, there's nothing I'd like better than to add more authors that I love to the roster of authors that I love. But anyway, one of the elements that those people, those cloistered readers, tend not to credit especially to the Victorians with their huge mutton chop whiskers and their bonnets and their wearing mourning. Your husband dies in 1849 and you wear mourning until 1901, something like that. One of the things that those people are unbelievably hesitant to attribute to the Victorians is a sense of humor, much less a sense of whimsy. And the author who wrote under the pen name of Lewis Carroll had a bucket load of both. And you might think, having just said that about Victorian classics, that I would be embracing these books, but I'm not particularly. Now, there's two reasons for that. For you Alice fans go nuts on me, there are two reasons for that. Number one is that there's nothing else in these books but humor and whimsy. And I kind of need that. I kind of need there to be something else. I kind of need to have the courses of the meal before I have the dessert. And two has nothing to do with this book. The second reason why I'm not absolutely in love with these two little books has nothing to do with the books themselves. It has to do with my own profession. I won't broaden this here to essayists or novelists or nonfiction writers in general. Just book chat. Just the book chat world. There ought to be a 1,000-year moratorium on any quoting from either of these books by any member of my profession. At least 1,000 years. So we start in 2020, and you don't get to quote from these books until 3020. At all. Ever. You don't ever get to make reference to the fact that I say, 16 impossible things before breakfast, or when I say a word, it's suddenly real to me, or anything like, or off with their heads, nothing like that. You don't get to allude to this book at all. And the reason for that is because at least 1,000 allusions to these two books are made in some book chat column, a book opinion column, an essay, a review. At least 1,000 allusions are made to these two books every single day. And that's a bit much. So the second reason why I don't really embrace this thing is because every time I encounter one of those things, and by now, every single word of these two books has been tiresomely quoted by some bloviating bookworm. Every time I encounter one of those, when I read these things, I have a knee-jerk reaction on the inside of anger and irritation, and that's no good for the book. So it's those two reasons that make me not particularly love the Alice books. I have this lovely Penguin Classic edition. I'm really happy to. I don't have any other edition. Don't have this in a normal black spine Penguin. Don't have it in the old Signet or anything like that. I would say that this is available. Of course, this is available on Project Gutenberg and other places like that, where common domain classics can be downloaded for free. If I were you and I were going to sites like that, I would hunt around. I am sure that a version with the Tenniel illustrations is also free, and I would stick with that. You really want Alice to be illustrated, and you don't want to be illustrated by anybody else. So I'm very happy to have this volume, and of course, in a limited way, your Penguin Classic for today is a recommend. Certainly, as I probably was making clear by that rant about book reviewers, this isn't a very quoted text. It's a very referred to text. So if that matters to you, you of course want to read it for that reason. It's also delightful. It's delightful. I think the delight wears a little thin myself, but I know that it has fans who just live in it. So it's a recommend, of course. This is a case, it hasn't been all that often in these Penguin Classic videos, but this is a case where I can recommend the volume at least as strong as I can recommend the text. This Penguin Classic edition is wonderful. So that's your Victober March of the Penguin for today. It's Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass. So I'm gonna wrap this up for now, but I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.